I don't know about you, but finding multifamily properties that make sense financially is just getting harder. That's why you need more strategies to be successful as a real estate investor. We sit down with Amy Johnson on today's episode, who's developed 2,000 acres of single and multifamily properties. We cover so much with Amy on today's episode. Number one, how to really analyze the markets that you're looking for land. Two, we talk about how to build a team, who you want on that team. We talk about structuring land development deals. And most importantly, we talk about her $50,000 mistake and how you can avoid those mistakes and much more. So Amy, what's happening right now in the market is that so many real estate investors are struggling to make deals work. Finding the right deals, financing them, getting to the end goal, if you will, is hard for a lot of investors due to interest rates, due to overpriced properties, especially we see with multifamily and in so many different sectors. So you've been able to successfully build a development company. And I think so many investors are actually considering that right now. Should I develop? Should I find land to develop? Because it's getting hard out there with the existing structures. So my question to you is, how have you been able to make deals work, in this, in terms of your development deals and mitigate construction costs and mitigate all the unforeseen things that can happen with development?
Yeah. Well, my kids call me thrifty because I love to thrift or yard sale shop. And so I think that I kind of take the similar principles like that and go towards my real estate career. So I started with buying in retail, buying off the MLS and stuff like that. And then I think I got a little bit spoiled because of the time period I did. And then I just felt like I don't want to pay this retail price for this product. One specific item that I was working with was self-storage. And I just didn't see the point in buying at a 6% cap rate and then hoping that I can make a couple changes to make this better, when I could see the massive improvements that came when I took from raw land. And I started off as actually an investor first. So I wasn't necessarily the developer when I started in self-storage. I just want to put that out there. So I started off with saying, okay, here's my money. And I watched and I learned how they were doing this. And so they took this raw land and worked on the rezone. And in each step of going there, from entitlement to building the structure, to stabilizing it, and then later refinancing, there was a huge value creation. And because of that, as long as I was patient, which worked well in my market, because I think if, in my mindset with our investing career, we're saying, okay, it's not a get rich quick. It's a long-term generational wealth thing that we are building here. We're building this for our children, or at least that was our philosophy that I had. Okay. So, that's kind of what opened the door into development. Is I just wasn't willing to pay that retail price. And so I had to figure out another way.
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense too, from the perspective of, okay, I'm going to buy it for X, especially right now. Things are overpriced. We're dealing with interest rates the way they are. People are saying they're even going to go up again. Some experts out there, right? We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, but the idea is that, okay, I can create this value in such a significant way versus I have such a margin right now. And so you have less to work with right now with existing structures, unless you're getting it at such a discount for a variety of reasons. But those are sometimes harder to find. We all know, and people know it, they know it's overpriced, so they're going to ask for what they want. So I'm curious, let's jump into, I like what you said too. It wasn't like you just went out to like 100 acres and started developing there. It's a sequential process, and it starts with small, steps. But it all also begins with market analysis. So I really want to dive into not every market probably. And let's go with the residential side, in terms of developing residential, which I know a lot of the women listening want to do, whether it's single family or whether it's a small multi. So let's talk about market analysis. How do you define the right market for development? Are there certain criteria? I mean, we know market analysis in general, right? Obviously, people coming to the community, low crime, strong schools, especially if you have home ownership. There's different criteria. But from a development perspective versus buying an existing property, what do you like to see? How do you really assess if that market has an appetite for development?
Yeah. And that's probably one of the most critical items that we look at for development, right? Right now, we do development in 9 different states plus Canada. So we're across the United States, and we look at lots of different markets. There's a couple markets we don't touch, but we're pretty open to most. And so when we're looking at that, we're really looking at, okay, what is the absorption rate? What is happening in this market? Where are a lot of people moving? Are they a lot of people moving here that's causing the supply and demand part? That is critical. I haven't had individuals come and bring me and say, hey, Amy, I have this 50-acre parcel and I will give this land to you for free if you can develop and work on something. Can we work together? And this land will be free. And I said, I'm so sorry. Even if you paid me to take this land, I cannot make this product in this market work to pencil for that, because the cost of housing was too low, maybe, like in certain markets there, their regulations and things like that. There's just different parts in there, but the biggest part goes back to the good old supply and demand. What can people expect? And when we're looking at development, it's critical for us to look at multiple exit plans, because in development, the one thing that's for certain is that nothing goes as planned.
Yeah.
And everything takes longer. Everything takes longer than you would ever expect.
Yeah.
Okay. So please plan on that. If I was going to shoot out one takeaway, I would tell you that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the times that I always thought, oh, it'll be a really fast deal, those have been the longest deals. And so please plan your finances and holding costs and everything else for that accordingly. So you really do have to look at the supply and demand, and do you have multiple exit strategies?
So there's a lot of things I want to ask around that, because I think those are all really good points. You first said, though, there's certain areas you don't touch. So doesn't matter. Yeah. You don't have to tell us the areas. You can tell us as much as you want, Amy, but real estate investors are listening to this.
I don't touch California. Sorry. I don't touch California. I've been tempted to touch California every time I step my toe into it. The bureaucracy, the codes, the length of time.
I was just going to say, is that the criteria? If a state, because I know that from a buy and hold perspective, I got my start in New Jersey. So everything we did was in New Jersey, which is one of the most tenant friendly states versus landlord friendly states in the country, probably really close to California. So is that also the same from a development perspective, like the landlord versus tenant friendliness?
That's not the only part, because I have an individual that does really well with ADUs in California and stuff so that's their path. They do it great. I guess our perspective is there's so much opportunity for land development. Like I get projects come by my desk every single day that I have to turn away. And so, why choose something that's way more difficult than it needs to be?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And timing and permits. And, I was going to do a self-storage in California. Again, the land I was not having to pay for. They were going to bring the land in as a partnership with it. And the city wanted me to spend about $80,000 in different tests before I could even be heard in front of a planning commission for my conditional use permit. $80,000 in tests. That didn't count my survey, engineering work, design work, architect work, any of that stuff for it. And they weren't very confident about it in the first place. Well, they just weren't very forthcoming.
And who did you talk to, Amy? The city planner?
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. You just go and talk directly to the city planner and say, hey, here's this process. And every city is completely different. You can be in the same state and every city is completely different in their process.
So if you have is a rule of thumb, would you say that it's helpful if they make it easier for you as a developer? I mean, that seems obvious, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not a developer. I mean, I've only done a couple of development deals. We really more on the brick and mortar existing structure process. So I think it's helpful though for those who are listening to say, okay, how do I find the right markets before I even start analyzing what I should do and don't do on that? I want to find the right markets that I actually am in, it's more inviting. It's more, friendly to what I'm about to do versus them putting the red tape. Is there other pieces that I can be mindful of when I'm talking to people or, assessing that from the early stages?
Yeah, I'd actually reverse it by going to the supply and demand and looking at how this market is going to receive this development. So if it's a rental product, I'll just give you one number right off. It has to be at least a very bare minimum of $1.25 square foot for rental comps. You can get that through they'll create a apartments.com or whatever. You can find that data out. We go through our professional property managers and they'll give us this report that shares all the different comps. So we've got to see okay, does this product work for building a product here? And $1.25 actually in today's market is a little bit even conservative. I would almost need to go up a little bit higher for that now. Yeah. So I have a product that's $1.89 a square foot, but because it has elevators, it's still, the numbers are a little bit tight, and that just depends on state and taxes and all that jazz.
When you're assessing supply and demand, I've heard different opinions. I've also have different opinions about, okay, if you see a lot of development happening, on one hand, you're like, okay, that there's interest and there's a need for it. Then there's an oversupply, right? Then that has happened in communities where, there's so much development and there's an oversupply and you now are holding the bag. To your point, I need multiple exit strategies because those two other developments have just put on the market XYZ, and I think the women listening may want to start with a smaller piece of land and maybe put 1 to 5 properties on there. I don't know if they're going to be doing 200 anyway. So I'm curious, is there any other tips for those who really want to, improve their ability to assess supply and demand for a particular market? Any other, tips, strategies you can share?
So I also am very connected to the Home Builders Association and looking at if it's a for. So that's the other part you have to decide, right? Is this a for rent product or a for sale product? If it's a for sale product, I'm talking to the builders and I'm asking, hey, what are you paying for lots right now today? Because the large Toll Brothers and all those guys, a lot of times they'll buy products. They've bought products from me, they don't want to go through that whole city process and they'll go through that. Now, obviously, Toll Brothers is not going to buy a 4 lot, if you bring 1 lot into 4. But you can talk to a home builder and be like, okay, to make your numbers work, how much do you need to pay for a lot?
Yeah.
Or what's a lot going for in this price for it? Be aware that the MLS lots that are active are definitely not the most accurate item to look for because that's a really, really retail price because it's just a ones or twosies, which is good if you're only making a ones or twosies. Like if you're making, I have a lot and I can make it a flag lot going back, then, and maybe that's a value play that you can do. My one thing I would say and I say this to women all the time because sometimes I feel like we don't value our worth.
Yeah.
And we play small because we feel like we need to, but a 50-acre parcel.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Amen.
I see all the time these guys that are out in my field and they've got these huge balls of I'm doing this and they have no experience whatsoever, but they're like, we'll figure it out on our way. Yeah. And then women are like, we have to have it perfect before we can upscale and go bigger.
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to put that out there. And I also want to put that I have done an 8-acre lot of 8 lots, super, super simple. And I have done, a 20-acre lot. And the 20-acre was actually way easier than the 8. So just because it's small doesn't mean it's easier. It's actually easier if it's larger in development.
Makes a lot of sense.
And the numbers make more, and the numbers make more sense. Things are more forgiving. You're engineering because, for example, there's certain things that are just standard, like a survey costs X amount of dollars, and your geotech costs X amount of dollars, whether that's in a 2-acre parcel or a 20-acre parcel. And so now the 20-acre parcel is bigger, and that cost is spread across. So that makes a big difference. So, I mean, I wouldn't say jump in. We have a development right now that we're working on that's 1,800 acres. I probably wouldn't go like that large. That's really large. That's a whole city, basically, right? But I just want to preach that don't think small of going that I need to go 2 acres to, I could go 20. So it can be easier. And I've also paid the same amount of money for a 20-acre piece as a 2-acre piece. Just look in different markets. And it doesn't have to be local to you to do development. That's probably the biggest part. I realized with a couple key principles, I can go out of state. I don't have to be in my backyard to do land development.
So we're expanding women's minds right now. Like, hold on, I'm not going to look at that 2-acre lot. I actually came across, say someone is thinking this right now. I came across a 20-acre lot, but I moved away from it because I didn't think I had the experience. So I want to dive into that and what they do need to do to set them up for success if they go down the path of saying, if it's the same amount of work, it's the same amount of costs, I really should explore that. But there are some gaps maybe. So Amy, I love what you're saying because I've seen that on multifamily, right? We started with a duplex and our last project was over 300 units and all existing structures, but unit size count. And you could really start to say that the bigger deals, they're more money, but there's an opportunity for cost to get spread. So I'd love to dive into, okay, I'm listening to this. I got some properties under my belt. I do some short-term rentals. I got some small multis. I really want to get into development because numbers are not making sense, just like we talked about. I came across a couple acres, but now you're expanding my mind. Would I consider 20 or 30? But I'm like, I've never developed land before. So what do I need to do to set myself up for success, especially if it's not in my area either? So walk us through some of those initial first steps, to building the team, building the expertise so they can mitigate their risks. Because you could argue 20 acres versus 2 acres, are you walking into more risk? But, I'd love to talk for sure. But I'd love to talk that through because I think women especially stop themselves. I've never developed a lot. Why would I start with a 20 acre lot versus a 2-acre lot? But yet, to your point, would I be really getting myself into something and a situation to really control costs? So let's walk through those first steps for those listening who want to consider maybe a development project that may not be just that small one.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, look around and figure out what type of asset you want to look into. Are you looking at obtaining? It's difficult to look at land and look at all. I do look at all avenues of different things, but there's certain things that I don't build for it, or I just don't have the market expertise. Like I'm not a super retail shop individual. Like I don't build C-stores as much, but I will bring other people in for that. So I would say if I was stepping back and I was like first starting off, and I guess I have individuals ask me this all the time and say, okay, look at the land. And if you don't know this market, you might need to research others and say, okay, what is a good price for land? What is land going for? Mm-hmm. What is land going for all what's called papered? Okay. So that means like it's planned through the city. What is that selling for? So how would you find that information out? You just work and network like crazy with really good commercial agents that are selling those retail pad sites. The other largest thing that I see new beginners have, and I see this happen in all sorts of different RIAs and everything there, is when you're first starting out, you actually want to be real. They are always really, really stingy. And they say, I don't want to share and I don't want to, and instead of doing everything yourself and thinking small, partner up with somebody else that maybe you can lean on. You have one skill, they have another skill, and you can lean on each other. For example, I'm not an underwriter individual. I'm not awesome at Excel and all of that, but I have somebody on my team that's outstanding at it, And he would be rolling over dead talking on a podcast right now, right? He doesn't want to be in front of somebody. Sure. So lean on that. So look and see, what is the supply and demand in the market? What are things selling for? And then if you see a good piece of a parcel, then your next step is, okay, maybe I should try to get it under contract. Here's the number one rookie move that people that are starting land development do when they try to get something under contract, is they don't give them enough time to sell a product. If you'll see, I will pay an extra $500,000 more for a land parcel if that landowner will give me the time to go through the city for it, or I still have to have deliverables, and I can't just be sitting on my hands, but I will tell them that. I said, I can give you X price now, or I can give you this price in 6 months.
Walk us through when you've done that. Give us an example of where you've done that.
Yeah. So I just say, we go through and we say, hey, I listen to their needs, what they're looking for. Is it have to close right away? Is this a retirement? Like you're selling your farm down the road or whatever. And honestly, I propose, because maybe because my dad was a farmer. And so I kind of grew up with this, and he actually lost some of his land, and I felt bad for that. But I always position to the farmer first and say, hey, would you like to work with me on this deal? Because we all know, as a developer, I am going to make your land more valuable down the road. And you do hear these stories, or maybe it's the Hallmark Christmas movies, whatever, right? The mean, nasty developer that makes so much money off the poor. So maybe that's where it comes from. Is I'm just like, hey, do you want to work with me? We can do a joint venture. We can put a land value of what your land is worth. For sure. We put this contract in, and then that's your capital injection into this development. And so I explain that. Sometimes it's over their heads and it's and I said, that's fine. That's okay. You just want your money. That's great. I will give you your money. I can give you X amount here. And it's still a price. It's still a time frame that I need. Like, I will never close land faster than 90 days. Never. I have in the past, and it's always bitten me in the butt.
Because you're just not giving yourself ample time?
You don't have enough time. Right. Yeah. You don't have enough time to do all of your due diligence and your geo and your survey and talk with the city. And there's so many skeletons in that land that you don't know about for it. So I won't close faster than 90 days.
Like that.
So I say, here's your 90-day price, your faster price, or I can give you 500,000, or whatever that amount is. I can give you a lot more money if you wait till we close at preliminary plat approval. And I will give you an update every step of the way of where I'm at. And I can put a drop dead date of X amount. But most of my contracts I love to have is that I don't. I close 20 days after preliminary plat approval. That's what I try for. So that's critical in how you set up that contract. So when I say get a contract set up, maybe will cause you to fail at the very beginning if you don't know how to set up that contract. Yeah. So, but I would lean in and say, hey, I want to work with somebody as a developer, and I bring them a lead, So I have worked with other individuals that have brought me leads of land, and they say, hey, this is a really good deal. This is why I feel it's a good deal, and I'd like to work on it. And then don't be afraid if one person says no. It doesn't mean that it's really not a good deal. It just means, like, right now I have 15 active projects and I really can't add another one, right? So
I like that.
But it might be somebody else's deal for it. So that's how I would start. I know that's a huge chunk, but the other critical part that was an eye-opener for me, and sometimes I feel like it's a secret in the development world. So you ready?
I'm ready. I love it. Get ready, everybody.
Here it is. Go to the city planner and you ask, who's a planner that comes and presents to your city often?
Like outside the area? Like somebody from another community?
No, not another city planner. Who is somebody that comes and presents developments in front of your city often?
Oh, like I'm an outside developer. I'm coming to present an opportunity. Gotcha.
The reason why is because when I'm out of state, I don't want to be known as, like, I'll give you an example. In Idaho, I have done it the first way. I have learned from my mistakes. I've done it the first way, and I became the outsider coming into their city, and I'm going to develop their land. And there's a lot more pitchforks that happen versus I hire, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound a little sexist, but I don't care because it's true. It happens. I hire a good old boy that's already known in the industry. He's there. He goes hunting with them, or he goes golfing with them, or whatever. And the planners know him, and I hire him to be my mouthpiece.
Is he a partner with you? Is he a
No? I just pay him
like a consulting fee.
Like a consulting fee. And they're there. They're all over. Ask the civil engineers. They'll say, who's a planner that you guys work with?
But don't they at some point say, listen, who owns this, deal? Who's running it? They're not running it. They're not making any like operator decisions.
She doesn't care.
They don't care.
When the neighborhood meeting happens, they don't know about development. They don't know how that works. They just feel like he's part of it.
Interesting. It's an interesting strategy. I haven't heard that one. My days, I've been around a while.
That's honestly, it's critical. We have had, like, for example, our 1,800 acre,
Mm-hmm.
we had the choice to go and pick. We had a billionaire wanting to fund our project. Okay. Lots of money, big pocketbook money, and saying, okay, here, I will fund. I want to bring all the money for this deal for it. Okay. And then the other investor that we had the choice had the local politic sphere. Okay. And we have found that local politics sphere is way more valuable than this billionaire's open cash, like ready to go for that development, because there's so much politics that go into development. And so you've got to play. Before I used to like fight it, I'm like, no, I'll show them. I can woman power. I can speak for myself. And it's true. I have. And then I have found, when I play the game, I can get better. And so sometimes you have to play the game, and sometimes it frustrates me, but that's okay. I'm not a very good smooth talker. I don't go play golf, and I'm not in some of those circles, and I can't be in every circle of every city council no.
I think you're raising a great point. I think the key is team. And it always is, and it's nothing new. Anyone listening is like, oh, I didn't think of that. But who? And in the process, who do I need to like really engage with first and second, third, and fourth? So that's a great point of maybe an existing developer to help be part of that kind of brand connection, whatever you want to call it, right? Brand ambassador. Who else is part of your team? Local, not local, especially as you start to scale.
Yeah, you've got to have a good local, this is very important, local civil engineer. You can have an awesome civil engineer in your team, and they won't know about something that other city did with their sewer or whatever, because it's just known that they know. And so I have made that mistake of like, oh, this large firm really, really did awesome, knocked it out of the park for me here in Utah, and they're licensed up in Idaho, so I'm going to use them. And it cost. I actually had to throw away almost all their work and start over. So that's an extra 50. That's a $50,000 lesson for it. So be aware of that. And then networking. I network really well with a lot of the local realtors, so I can see what's in other markets. Like what are you guys missing? What's there? Because some products, maybe townhomes aren't a thing there, or something like that. And so I can bring a new product to the market, and then it flies off the shelf for it if it's a for sale. Or maybe that market doesn't have studio apartments, and it's a need that's missing right now for it. So that's another part that's critical inside there.
So you got this brand ambassador, which I love this idea. You got the local civil engineer, local realtors. How about, in terms of anything else to get through due diligence? And then let's talk about construction and what that looks like.
Our due diligence, we have an individual in our team. That's all they do is the due diligence. And they have this really strong checklist items. And, maybe that's something I can create and shoot off for you guys of like top 10, 20 due diligence items. I'm happy to kind of create for you. That might be helpful. There are some things there. Somebody that, like, for example, I'm not somebody that pays attention to detail for it. I'm more of a visionary. And so I struggle with that. So I'm grateful that I have somebody on my team that looks at all of those small details inside things. And so there's a lot there to unpack. There are also development companies that will pay as a consulting. Like you can consult with somebody and they know all of those things. And that goes back to my earlier comment of saying, don't be stingy on your first deal. Go about that you're trying to learn more instead and hire these professionals that are outstanding at what they do. And then, and ask, just really say, hey, can I get a list of what's your report that you are looking at? So, like, oh, I didn't even know I need to look at Army Corps of Engineers.
The last question, Amy, I'd have is that for those listening, they have their eye on some lots. And, all they need to do is say, go to an Amy, a local Amy, or somebody's developing, say, listen, I really think this has got great opportunity. I know the market, and they make a case for it. I think the challenge for so many newbies, in a sense of like, especially larger development, is they don't know what's fair and equitable. And they don't want to take scraps. We say that's all the time on our Strive Mentorship program. These women who are like raising millions of dollars, taking like a $10,000 fee. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Like that is just makes me so angry, but that's another story. Yeah. So what is fair and equitable? I'm newer to development. I really want to get my foot in the door. I've gotten land passed through my desk and I'm just like, this is an opportunity. I talked to someone like an Amy. What is fair and equitable? Is there a percentage? Is there an approach? I'm sure it's not one thing, only one, like, oh, just take $10,000. But what would your thinking be? What would your kind of advice to the women listening be on that?
Yeah. And that's going back to make sure you understand your worth of what you're having. Some people say like, oh, I don't have the money. The money is the easiest part, in my opinion. So you need the money, you need the knowledge of how to do it, and then you need the deal. Those are the three components, right? And so we kind of divide that up. First of all, I wanted preference because the commercial world, especially, is a very dog-eat-dog world. So do not come and bring this deal on a silver platter that's not tied up. Okay. Have an LOI, have something on there. I have been burned that way. So I just want to make sure you understand
Great suggestion.
And then come with it. I give individuals 10% of, first, actually, let me take a step back. I ask them how they want to be involved in this deal. I let them give me the number. And you're right. I have paid wholesalers, like people that just want a wholesale fee. And I have paid a wholesale fee up to $400,000 for it. And I have made way more money off of that after for him. But I gave that wholesaler an opportunity and I said, do you want to be part of the deal or do you want a fee? And they said, I just want a fee. Yep. And that's okay. We've got to feed our families and keep our lights on.
There's nothing right or wrong.
Like so, there's no wrong with that. But I just question you. I get, especially realtors. So I am like, we have a brokerage and stuff. So I am a realtor. So I'm not dissing on realtors, but I see realtors have this problem all the time is they care more about their commission instead of their long-term
wealth building.
Building.
Yeah.
And so they don't see that. And so you can see that going across the board on lots of things. So I would say a minimum, like know your worth on there and it could be about 10%, I would say that deal is. So carry that forward. I'm doing a 20-acre parcel, going back to that 20 acres, right? It can be just as easy as a 2-acre. That 20-acre parcel we bought for $1.2 million. Okay. The investors get 25% of this deal. The other sponsors get 75. We bought it for 1.25, just a fraction of the land. So I have a hotel that's buying a portion of it. I've got towns, I've got apartments. The towns and apartments are worth just paper, 4.5 million. 1.2 to 4.5. That's the equity that's available in development.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying don't settle for the retail. Think bigger.
Yeah.
Know your worth. Just and it kind of goes back to that book, Who Not How, of just because you don't have the skill set doesn't matter. Just you're good. You're great at what? Are you great at networking? Are you great at whatever? You bring capital. Yeah.
I love that.
And find that.
And you said those three things again was money, the deal. What was the third one you said?
And the know-how, how to run that deal.
And I think that's really important and a takeaway for everyone listening. Where are you strong in? And out of those three, and then leveraging that and finding those Amy's that you could potentially, work with and be creative and think about the long term, right? It's not just about that fee. It's about a piece of the upside too. So you can learn along the way from an Amy, from other people. And like she said, that was a $50,000 mistake. I'm sure you have other ones like that. I have tons of $50,000 mistakes. So Amy, I love this. Really good food for thought. It's getting me jazzed up about some ideas I have. So where can the ladies listening learn more about you, Amy?
Yeah, Y, like the letter Y, Street Capital is my company. You can come to our website. On our website, there's a book a call if you have a deal. Or you maybe don't want, maybe you're like, this has overwhelmed me, but I want to understand. We didn't talk about the returns, but that, like that one investment that I was just talking about has a 3.5 gross multiplier. So you're like, hey, I just want the money. I just want to put my money to work and I want to look at these and I don't want to pay for a retail price. Then come and let me show you some options for it. So that's, Y Street Capital is where you can find us.
Thank you so much, Amy, for your time and really appreciate all your words of wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye.